Okay, so what I'm doing is that I'm going to talk on the inner critic. I've got a list of 14 tips or things that we can understand to get rid of the inner critic that comes from childhood trauma, generally speaking. And it is from the Complex PTSD book by Pete Walker. There's another book that I'm on at the moment, which is really beautiful, and it's called Trauma and the Soul. And I've been looking at this book. I'm sort of going to start chapter 3 tonight, but there's bits of this book that I would like to address that is really useful to understand how in childhood trauma, the soul is split. It's like the soul is shattered. If a child is abused or there's early abuse, be it either sexual, physical, verbal, or emotional abuse, and that can be not just from parents, it can be from, it can even be in school. It's like in the playground that can happen, where people suffer abuse and then as adults we split off and we basically don't feel good about ourselves. So unless we begin to work with the inner critic and annihilate it and get rid of it, then we're not able to become whole. And there is a gentleman, not everybody knows the name when I say it, but Carl Gustav Jung, he talked, I'm going to show you one of his quotes as well, because the reality that it is very painful for people to address the inner critic. For instance, it will mean that we have to get in touch with our inner child. And if we've had a really tough childhood, often we don't know how to even address that or to even feel warm to our own inner child, because our own inner child or as a child, if we were treated really harshly and badly and not loved or nurtured, then we don't have that ability naturally to do that for ourselves. So it's a huge learning process. And the only way through this is by understanding what complex PTSD is, which it is not a disorder. It's, events. If you can imagine, you take somebody and you abuse them day in, day out, year in, year out, whilst their brain is developing. Or people who even do this to animals, like little puppies. I know human beings and puppies are not the same, like little children, but they are. It's like we're all of, I wouldn't say the word, from a religious aspect, but we're all of God. We've all got feelings. Animals have feelings, babies have feelings, and often children are highly overlooked in society and not treated. They're little people. We have a soul when we're a baby, and you can see it in a child's eyes. And any abuse where adults are not dealing with their own trauma or maybe, their own behavior or their own anger issues, then it means that they pass it on to their child, and it's very unfair. But it happens, and those of us that are doing the work to heal means that we've got to, take the power back into our own hands and empower ourselves through information, through sharing in groups, by, doing things that are going to take us to a new level. And it can mean that we have to do a lot of grieving, a lot of healthy angering. It can mean that healthy blame has to come into it, because if we don't have healthy blame for, somebody that's abused us, then it means we're not going to protect ourselves when we get into relationships with people. We're just going to be accepting of behavior that is completely unacceptable. So there's a lot of good reasons to read Pete Walker's book. And it is not the only book out there, but it's the book that came into my life and has helped me to restore, my soul, and to bring me into a level of becoming whole to some degree, because we all are whole ultimately. We come in that way, and it's only when we're chipped away at and then we become adults and we say horrible things to ourselves that keeps us in that place of abuse. So saying horrible things to ourselves is abusive, and it is difficult, because I would say that people who've not been through abuse also give themselves a hard time. And I just think it's that much harder for people who have been through abuse. So let's see if I can share my screen and do this well, because last time I shared my screen, I made a right mess of it. So what I'm going to do is go here, and the plan is that I open up the 14 steps for the managing the inner critic, and then this should happen if I say share screen. Okay, so if you can see, I have a list. It's PDF. It's from Pete Walker's website, but you can also see it on you can see it in the links below. So you're going to be able to see this list. And I don't think I'm going to go through, I'm just going to go through the basics of it. I'm not going to read the totality of each tip because you'll be able to print off your own copy. I'm going to give you a flavor for what it is. He says here that here is a list of 14 inner critic attacks divided into the key categories of perfectionism and endangerment. Each is paired with a healthier and typically more accurate thought substitution response. So to deal with our inner critic, you know, we can take a simple example. Say that you wake up late and you're late for work or something like that, or you know, as an example, you're late for work. You wake up and then you go into self-hatred and you go into the same sort of attack that you would have had as a child, you know, from your parents, you know, for just being yourself. Like if you were playfully doing something and they told you, you know, how awful you were, or, you know, that you weren't, you know, for instance, I remember once, you know, sadly, I think, you know, being called, it's really heavy stuff actually, but I remember once, you know, by one of my parents being called, you know, a dirty little tramp. So when you hear things like that from your carers that were supposed to love and nurture you, it can really hurt your soul. It hurts at a soul level. And it means that as adults, we don't have the self-love or the self-nurturance that we need. So it is completely shocking how parents or, you know, others can speak to their children. And we need to get to self-love, and that is a process. And part of that process is going to be looking at stuff like I'm going to show you now, and then you print off the list and you carry it with you. So if anybody comes on, because I'm showing you this list and I'm reading it, I'm not going to be able to see my live chat. I can see on my phone, but I don't know if it's going to show me if anybody chats. So here goes. Number one, perfectionism. My perfectionism arose as an attempt to gain safety and support in my dangerous family. So if we are going to try and be perfect, then we're never going to get anything done. So we got to really understand that perfectionism is really a farce, that we don't need to be perfect, that we are lovable exactly the way we are. And through time and being accepting of ourselves and nurturing our inner child, like if you imagine you had a 5-year-old you in front of you right now, and you were dealing with your 5-year-old, you would not expect them to be perfect. You would love them regardless of however they were, you know, whether they're crying or whatever they're doing, you're going to love that inner 5-year-old. Or if I had a 5-year-old in front of me right now that was crying, I would feel love for them. I'd want to nurture them. I wouldn't want to tell them they've got to stop crying and be perfect. That's just one example. Number two, he says all or none, black and white thinking. And it says, I reject extreme or overgeneralized descriptions. So, for instance, I used to believe that I had to be fully healed, whatever that meant to me, that, you know, I was aiming for the big one. I'm going to be fully healed. I'm going to do the law of attraction stuff. I'm going to get into spirituality. I'm going to be this perfect person, perfectly healed. And again, all or nothing, or the savior complex, thinking that somebody's going to save us, or thinking that it's all or nothing, that if we have a bad day that we've failed, is not the way to think. It needs to be eliminated, because we don't know emotionally how we're going to be feeling in 10 minutes time, let alone in 10 years or 10 days. So that criticism has to stop, because it's self-judgment. Any self-hate and disgust and toxic shame, you've got to now be on your side, and you need to eliminate self-hatred, self-disgust and toxic shame. So one simple thing you can do, no matter what you look like or feel like on any given day, you look in the mirror, and as you look in the, you begin to just say, I love you. You know, just a simple thing, I love you, because that's self-acceptance. And I did that. I mean, we all have days when we think we might be able to look better or be better, but if self-hatred and self-disgust and toxic shame has to stop. The next one is micromanagement, worrying, obsessing, and looping and over-futurizing. Now, this is a difficult one for many because it's very ingrained in people. And I struggle with this one a little bit. I don't worry so much now, but I can loop or over-futurize over things. You know, if, for instance, if I send somebody a message and I don't hear back from them immediately, I can worry that I did something or said something or I've upset them. And that's part of my personality. But also I'm aware that, you know, people, you know, we've got to self-talk and realize that, you know, other people have got their own things going on, that we can always ask the question. We can be more direct. We can, if we're worried that we've upset somebody, we could say something to a friend like, you know, have I upset you? We can stop a lot of our obsessing and worrying by basically being straightforward in our communication. And again, that's something that can be difficult for people that have been through trauma because they've been shut down, and anything that we've said as a child or when we've gone for nurture, it's been the worst of the worst. So there's a lot of development that we need to catch up on because we've had, it's called arrested development. It means part of our personality is not formed fully because of the treatment we've received. So we can be angry about that parents or whoever, you know, created that. And it's healthy to have healthy anger. You know, the spiritual beliefs that anger is wrong, and also that we have to forgive everybody is really not useful to people who are healing the CPTSD. So the next one, it's unfair, devaluing comparison. So we love Facebook. Hey, I love Facebook too, and Instagram. We all love our social media, not all of us, but quite a huge number of us. And the thing is that people will put out their best on social media. They're not going to put their worst picture up. It's very rare. So, and their best times generally. So we can basically have unfair, devaluing comparisons, you know, when we compare ourselves to others. So we have to realize that each of us is unique. And I'll tell you something, that I've been studying astrology since 2015. And I look at charts and I read astrology charts to help people heal some of their trauma and understand themselves, to know themselves. And what you'll find, what I find, every single chart is unique and different. Each of us is like a snowflake. It's like no two of us are the same. And there's something else that happened for me is that later on, you know, I had a very successful business going from the age of 29, no, sorry, from the age of 21 until age 50. And then the worst of the worst happened for me. I had a flashback regression and I lost my business and I lost, you know, partly my mind. I lost 20 pounds in weight and my hair was falling as well. So it was really hard for me. You know, I had to get my hair growing. I had to try and put on weight, and I had to, you know, sort out how I was going to have a career for myself and figure out what I loved. So it's very difficult at times that we can compare ourselves to others. So for instance, one of my comparisons was, because I'm 53 now, I would say, you know, oh, I'm not where I should be. I should be somewhere else. It should have happened a different way. It happens as it happens. And I'm so grateful that for the knowledge I've got and the people that, you know, that care about me and love me that are in my life now. And also there's, you know, there's just so much that through the healing, there's bad days and there's good days, but it's all, you know, we just keep going forward. And when we have a bad day, it's just a bad day. It's not the end of the world. But if we've got people to talk to, we will come through the other end. The next thing is guilt. Guilt, feeling guilty does not make you guilty. So one way to eliminate guilt is that, this is an example, if somebody asks you to go somewhere or do something, this is a simple one, or you're not sure how you feel about, you know, an event or something, you can always say to people, you know, I'll sleep on it or I'll have a think about it. There's a lot of guilt tripping in families as well, where there's an expectancy where you've got to hang out with them or you have to forgive them. And so it can create a lot of guilt. And also the, you know, church, the beliefs of the church and in spirituality will also make people believe that they have to be a particular way. or that spirituality is a particular way. Each of us is unique. It's really important. So we need to eliminate our guilt by thinking about, simple things and organizing our lives and what comes out of our mouths in a way that protects us. And that means, if we don't want to hang out with somebody, we just say, I'm not sure, or I'll think about it. So we can eliminate guilt day to day, but guilt from the past, we can begin to drop as well. We don't need to feel guilty about the people that abused us and that we don't particularly like them. That's just the way it is. If I was going around being abusive to people, I wouldn't expect them to like me either. And I'm not going to feel guilty about, the fact that I don't like who I don't like. We have to, this life is short. Next thing, shoulding. So he says here, I haven't missed one. Okay. Shoulding, I will substitute the word want to for should. So what he's saying is that we shouldn't should ourselves. So when you should, I should do this, I should do that. Like clearly there are things that we need to get done, but shoulding ourselves, like I should own my own home. I should be in a relationship. I should go to bed early. We need to be gentle with ourselves in the healing process. Shoulding, try and eliminate that word. And if you're watching this and you should other people, I don't like when people tell me what I should do. And I don't think other people like being told what they should do. Should is not a nice word. So eliminate it completely. And actually, when you begin to do that, you'll just see how many times you use it. So next, number 8, overproductivity, workaholism, and busyholism. So, we need to slow down, and that is a process. If we have fight, flight, freeze, fawn, so the flight response can make you overproductive, because being overproductive, workaholism and busyholism is a form of the flight response, which means that it's a response to childhood trauma. Okay. So in the book, you can read the fight, flight, freeze, fawn response, and you'll understand what the hell's going on so you can begin to heal it. We're not crazy. When we experience this stuff, we think we should be healed and that we should be fixed, and without having grieved or fully understood what's going on. Next, harsh judgments of self and others and name calling. So one thing is that he says here, I will not let the bullies and critics of my early life win by joining and agreeing with them. So harsh judgments, we need to stop it. We need to stop judging ourselves harshly. We're human. And then often what happens is, and this can happen in the fight response, that when we go into fight in the 4 Fs, the fight, flight, freeze, fawn response, there can be name calling. If somebody doesn't want to do what we want to do, we're codependent, we're suffering, we've been abandoned and betrayed in the past. And then we flip out and we start calling somebody names. If people are not cooperating with us, like be it in relationships or, instead of calling names, we need to call people out, tell them what the problem is, and then we need to, adjust it and move on. Because the minute we start name calling, it can devolve into just a nightmare in relationships. So name calling, as best you can, we're all human. We need to not do that to each other on any level. Then he goes on to endangerment attacks, and he says, number 10, drasticizing, catastrophizing, and hypochondrizing. I was big on being a hypochondriac. I don't blame myself. I went through years of thinking every day I was going to die. I felt like that as a child. I never felt safe. So, when I got away from the abuse at 14 and a half, that continued the hypochondrizing, saying it incorrectly, but there you go. And thinking the worst of the worst, and then also drasticizing about things. It's very difficult healing this stuff. So we have to be gentle with ourselves. Number 11, negative focus. I renounce over noticing and dwelling on what might be wrong with me or life around me. So we can start looking for, looking at the roses instead of the thorns, so to speak. We have to protect ourselves. So this is about being realistic, but, it's not about being overly positive and, going for being happy, because that's just, again, you know, it's not realistic. We're human. We flow with energy, like the sun shines and then it rains and then it snows and there's wind, and whatever goes on in the ecosystem of the world or out there is happening in our internal lives as well. It's not one way. We're emotional, and that's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing to have tears. It's a beautiful thing to have laughter. And we've got a healing work to do. So we need to be gentle with ourselves. Now, time urgency. So when we're late, we can start rushing and freaking out. And the best thing to do with things like that is if we've got problems in that area, it's better to plan ahead and give ourselves time. And that means that when we're healing, that we do need extra sleep as well. We may not be able to do the current job we're doing, because in the healing process, we may need to, downsize in a job and just look after our basic needs, because healing does take time and it requires a lot of readjustment, nutrition, sleep, caring for our bodies, bathing, all of these things that we have to do. It's being a human being is really busy. It's hard work, but we can heal this stuff. And then disabling performance anxiety. And he says here, I reduce procrastination by reminding myself that I will not accept unfair criticism or perfectionist expectations from anyone, and don't either. I had somebody that was going on to me about a particular part of my body who was claiming they were spiritual, as an example, and, really crass behavior. There are some funny people in this world, and the performance anxiety, don't allow people to pick on you, call them out on it. If somebody says something about your body or the way you speak or the way you look, call them out on it. They don't know your personal circumstances. Say, excuse me, I don't like being spoken to like that. And some people you're going to have to walk away from. And that's the truth of the matter. Number 14, he says, perseverating about being attacked unless there are clear signs of danger. So, we can worry about that we're going to be attacked, but generally, as adults, we have self-protection and we have friends that care about us. So we can look at this also. This comes from Pete Walker's website. It's below this video. You're going to be able to see. So do check that out. Now, what I want to do is do a new share and get rid of that. I want to bring up this. Yay. Okay. Got it. Now, this is Carl Gustav Jung. He was a psychoanalyst in the 1800s. He was Freud's friend for about, I don't know how many years, but he was 20 years younger than Freud. And they were friends. And Carl Jung has got some beautiful work. There are books that I read. Carl Jung, he has therapy, Jungian therapy. I hope that pronounced that correctly. But Carl Jung's work is about becoming whole. And he looked at the soul as the way we do that, like to realize that we are that spiritual aspect of the soul. So to be spiritual doesn't mean that we actually have to follow anything. Generally, that's just the essence of who we are. We don't need to meditate. We don't need to, sit under a tree. We don't need to do anything. We just are spiritual beings. I believe I have a soul. I get it in my sleep more than anything. I see eyes face to face, like, it's not a scary thing. That sounds a bit scary, but that's explained actually, interestingly enough. And this book that I read, Trauma and the Soul, chapter 2, it talks about how we dream about the archetypes in our sleep and how dreams show us where we need to heal. So that's very interesting. So Carl Jung said, I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become. Carl Gustav Jung. Now, the thing is with this is that it's very, this is later on in my work that I understand this, meaning that my early trauma, when so many bad things have happened to you and you've been so traumatized by your family, or who, in childhood, if it's not family that's traumatized you, maybe it could be, for some people, it can be, awful things by other people as well. And it means that, we grieve the original wounding, we grieve it. And it's okay to be healthy anger, and healthy blame is fine for a period of time as well, because we will evolve that. With forgiveness, what happens is, because people will suggest when you complain about your childhood trauma, people will generally tell you, oh, but it's your mum or it's your dad and you need to forgive them and blah, blah, blah. And it is blah, blah, blah. Because if you've been really, really wounded and hurt and had no nurture and no love and no kindness, it's okay to be peed off with the people that did that. And eventually, as you process and you do this work, what will happen is that you will get to a point where when something's been fully processed, you will realize there is nothing to forgive. And it's a funny one. And this is what I've begun to see. So it doesn't mean, and then people, if they say to me, have you forgiven so-and-so yet? Well, it's really nobody else's business. And I don't know why people ask that question. It seems, I think maybe people ask it because they're dealing with their own forgiveness issues. It is nothing to do with another human being, who you forgive or who you do not forgive. It's your soul is here and you are unique. And we need to realize that it is nothing ever to do with anyone else. Anyway, so I am not what I am not, I can say this, I am not what happened to me. And I say that really quite seriously, and I am what I choose to become. And that is part of the inner critic work, and it's part of knowledge, and it's part of being openly speaking about this. You know, I'm a powerful soul, and I'm, you know, got work to do in this world. And part of my trauma has given me the ability to be able to speak up and read all of these amazing books and study astrology so that I'm able to share information with other people, to empower people, empower each other. That's what we're here to do. So all of this, you know, we begin to evolve it. Okay, I'm going to stop share. Okay, that's it. I'm going to leave it there. I hope this has been useful to you today, and I'll be back in the week with some more information. And whoever's watching, let me see, because I can never read my, I'm just going to see something here because I can't see who is, nobody, there's no comments. Okay, I really appreciate anybody who's watched this. I do realize it's a very tricky subject, child abuse and childhood trauma, because it means that people are shamed into silence, toxic shame, and it is the most awful, tragic thing, particularly, you know, the physical violence and the sexual abuse is so awful in society, how many children this happens to. And it's a time where, you know, this society is changing. It actually shows in astrology charts. It's like we've got something called Saturn and Pluto lined up right together in Capricorn. We are having, you know, humanity is breaking down to be rebuilt. We've had enough of this, all of this authority, and the church as well, the Catholic Church. I'm not against religion, but, you know, where people are having sex with children and stuff like that, it's outrageous. And Hollywood as well. We're having them for breakfast, so to speak, in what Pluto and Saturn coming into the astrology there that I'm talking about. I've got videos for people who don't know that I do that. You can check out. I do astrology videos as well. But that's another subject. This is about healing our childhood trauma and Ptsd, which is not a disorder, it is a response. And a lot of people out there, I don't mean to, you know, be harsh on this, but a lot of people label themselves unfairly, you know, with BDP and other things. So, you know, make sure that you're not just labeling yourself, you know, thinking that you've got something that you haven't got, because if you've been abused for years, then, you know, generally you're reacting to what you've been through, and those are the parts of you that need to be healed. Okay. All right. Thanks for watching, and I'll be back in the week, and maybe tomorrow or Tuesday. Thank you, Timmy. You're saying thanks for the time to explain. Thank you, Timmy, for watching as well. And thank you, Black Lotus, as well. Okay, that's it. I'm going to go and get my supper. It is coming up to 10 p.m. in London. Okay. And check out the critic list below and print them off. And if you want to chat to me on Facebook, I'm over on Facebook. And I've got a ladies group as well for anybody who wants to join that if you're a lady. For the men, I know a few groups that are useful for childhood trauma stuff that I can link you into. Okay. Good night, everybody.